Hey there, this is Adam Quiney of Evergrowth Coaching, and we're going to talk about a leadership strategy today, and that is specifically around people whose part of their essence is love. So if you're one of these people, you probably feel this incredible desire to let people know how loved they are, to love them, and to be loved, to receive love. It's always a two-way street. And you're probably very sensitive to an absence of love. You're probably especially vigilant and present when there's sort of an absence of love in a connection you have, or when it's kind of missing. You're especially attenuated to this because it's who you are. And so you are more sensitive, more present to the absence of that very thing. So first of all, if you're one of these people, you may find yourself in a profession like healthcare or nursing, or places where you're there to, it gives you an opportunity to really give your love to people, to really support people, to give back. High performers that bring this trait to the world tend to find themselves in medical professions because there's a real desire to heal people. That's part of what someone who is loved really wants to do, is to heal others. So that's the essential nature of it. That's kind of at its purest and where you might find yourself. And in the realm of leadership and pushing towards this, it's quite possible that this gets twisted. And the twist happens when that desire to heal others, to provide warmth and love and nurturing to other people, shifts from a possibility into an obligation or a duty. And the trouble with that shift is that the universe is at its core, and this is a belief, it's an abundant place. There's an infinite amount of everything. So if you're trying to get through all the emails, it's a fool's errand. There's an infinite number of people that want to talk to you and address you, et cetera, et cetera. And so too is the quixotic goal of alleviating all the suffering. It's a noble purpose, but if you actually make that your mission, if you actually have that drive you, it starts to shift from a genuine desire to love, and it starts to become this burden, this guilt, this heavy weight on your back. The easy metaphor, the visual to think about this is that of, I believe his name is Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile, where he just took on people's suffering and bore it himself. He held that burden himself to the point of being afflicted with it, as opposed to simply being a conduit to alleviate it. And so the funny thing about people whose essence is one of love is they can often they can have this experience in their leadership of feeling quite burdened, quite beaten down, and mired in duty and obligation. And from that, we get to the final place where they can end up. Because with all of this duty and obligation and burden and guilt, because there's people out there not suffering, or if you yourself have a moment of not suffering, it's like, oh my God, how can I have this moment of not suffering when there's all that suffering out there in the world? I've got to address that. You can see that starts to build guilt. And so the funny result of this is that you might find yourself completely unloving. In fact, just hating humans, just sick of them. Like, it's inevitable. There's no amount of love you can give that's ever sufficient. You never get recognized enough. People are ultimately selfish, selfless. Not selfless, selfish. And there is never enough recognition for you. So you can end up feeling very unloved and frankly unloving of the people around you, frankly fed up and harboring these thoughts that, again, tie back into the guilt. Oh my goodness, now not only am I doing this work to alleviate their suffering, but I kind of hate them for it. So the irony is that leaders who innately their path is one of love can find themselves really burdened and guilt-ridden, and then in addition to that, quite filled with resentment. Usually it doesn't boil up to the point of hate, although that kind of comes up and then tends to bubble back down because resentment is a little bit pushed further down. It's buried a little bit further below the surface. And so the cool thing about this is that the path is actually through. most of you that have this innate quality are resisting owning that you have that resentment. Even though it's an experience you have, it's really challenging for you to own, like, hey, I really kind of just hate this person right now, and I'm trying to alleviate their suffering. But the other place this can really get in the way for leaders is that sometimes we need to let people suffer. It's not our job to fix suffering. Suffering is not wrong. Suffering is a part of being alive. And when love stops being just this gift that you naturally bring and starts to become this chore that you have to do, it can become about, oh my goodness, there's another person suffering. Now I've got to go fix that. And it sort of ends up looking like this concentric ring around you, around which everyone gets their needs met and everyone has everything sorted and people don't have to suffer much. And you are kind of martyred. You're this martyr right in the center of all of that, who never gets her needs met, never get your time to be held and supported and loved. It can start to feel like just you pushing this all out into the world. When is it going to be my turn? And the beauty of your path in leadership is that actually creating it so that it is your turn to be supported is the journey. So, funny game. Love, that capacity for love and that ability to be that way often shows up in leaders as quite the opposite. Resentment, exhaustion, apathy, resentment. Again, maybe a third helping of resentment. Funny world. Thanks a lot. Much love.